Did it right.
Yay!
I did it right. I was
We're
sitting there.
online.
I had a minute. I had a moment. My stream deck is sitting here, and I'm looking at OBS, and I'm looking at the scene list, and we have four scenes. We have stay tuned, intro, scene, and then we have cameras, which is actually just basically pulling our camera feed in. And I'm laughing because I'm looking at this and I'm going, which one do I click when the intro is done?
Whoops. Yay, we picked the right one.
The music had been
randomly.
Jim, the music had been done for a good 10 seconds before
it's
like, oh yeah, that's the one.
I remember now.
So how's everybody doing tonight? I didn't really do a lot of promotion on this episode, but I did throw it up in the Discord. We have a Discord.
Yay.
I will, if I can remember to, we'll put the Discord link in the show notes for the posthumous views.
Right.
My color is like way off tonight, but whatever. We're gonna run with it because I'm not doing any post editing.
Looks better than mine.
I have
a halo.
So to report to our listeners, viewers, whatever, wherever have you, we have been really, really freaking behind on the audio podcast. So the video versions are the current most up to date right now. I looked today and I downloaded episodes. I stopped posting to the audio podcast in July. So I am like, I got a lot of work to do. I got to catch up. There's like 6 episodes I have to catch up on. So I'm going to start on that tomorrow, hopefully, and then we'll be able to get some up by the end of the week. I would like to get at least a couple of them up. Because I'm starting to have some time free up. So let's let me start us off here with the start button. Wait, no, this is the wrong. Now I got to fix this. Hang on. Because I don't have control. The stream deck would not have helped me anyway. I don't have proper control. I'm in the wrong profile. I got to put a button to change profiles on here. So we're on scene 1. Scene 2. Wait. This is not changing what I want it to. Now I'm going to have a moment. Oh, it's waiting for OBS to like
catch up.
Authenticate against it. We'll just do it manually tonight. It's fine. Turn this on. And then turn this one off. Because we didn't reset from last week. All right. So, we're going to talk about custom built guitars tonight. It's something that I've had custom made gear. I guess technically you could look at my Warmoth Strat, which is...
Yeah, you could look at that as a custom build.
You could look at this as a custom build. It's not. It's a fender body with a Warmoth neck and locking tuners and the whole 9 yards. That I actually had a local music store build for me, Good Time Music in Streamwood, Illinois. Give them some business. Please pay to keep the lights on. We would appreciate that. I've never done like it's actually been a fantasy of mine, right? Like I want to do at some point back when I was a kid, like first started playing guitars, like the real pros have guitars made for them. You know, that's the whole thing. Like that's clearly how this works. And then, of course, come to find out as an adult, it's like, no, they're just buying old guitars. Like, you know, the cynical part of me is like, they don't really get shit custom made. They just buy old shit. Like, so
they don't care.
No, some players do have stuff custom made, particularly guys who use Fender Custom Shop stuff, which we'll talk about later in the show. But it's a topic I think for a lot of people. I think it's sort of elusive, so it'll be interesting to go through this night. We're going to talk about a couple of different things and people that spun off the Fender Custom Shop and problematic people. A couple of news items. We don't really have any what's new. Neither Jim nor I have really bought any gear. I bought strings.
And you have a fuzzy thing on your microphone.
Oh, I guess, yeah. So I bought this windscreen, which cost me way more than I want to talk about. And, you know, it's an AKG windscreen for an AKG C414 microphone. So if you want to look it up, you can find out what it costs. But, yeah, it kind of sucked. Yeah. Well, so...
No, I know. It's
I mean, the reason why I got the AKG
I got the Wish.com version.
I mean, it's $1,000 microphone, so I'm going to put the wind cover that goes with it. Like, that's basically what it boils down to. And I do use this for Twitch, so... if I'm yelling at the microphone and shit, I gotta have something to cut the bass, so it's not like so over the top. But
in case people were wondering what I was reaching for, that's where my volume control is. I don't have like a remote thing I'm reaching into.
Yeah, well, it's weird because just in like using it right here, like I think like it's cut down on some of the table noise as well.
Yeah,
and I don't know why. It's maybe just because it's dampening some of the sound going into.
Well, you've got the Rode. Look at you. You got the $1,000 mic and the Rode.
Yeah, the $1,000 mic I paid like $200 for.
Yeah, and the
this
everything.
Is the best score right here that I've ever had.
I've got the Gator Frameworks. This is Gator Frameworks, and this is an AK.
The same price, right?
Something runner.
This and that are the same price.
Yeah.
So
I think they're exactly the same price, or within a few dollars of each other. And then it's slowly destroying the thing it's mounted to that I have to put a piece of wood to. And then I've got this one. I literally remember when I was recording for a long time with the back to my face, and we were like, "How come you're getting so much reverb?" And yet we couldn't hear my voice, and it was because I had and so I put an F. See, that's the back side. And so I put an F. I can't show it to you, but I have an F on this side.
I know somebody who is an audio engineer, and they told me, they said, you would be surprised by how often that actually happens to people.
Oh, yeah.
So we shouldn't feel so bad. We should feel bad because it went on for months before we realized.
It was ridiculous amount of time. It was at least
Jim got acoustic treatment and everything else because we were like, what the hell is causing this? Like, this is ridiculous.
It didn't hurt to get the acoustic treatment.
No, actually, it helped quite a bit too. But yeah. So, man,
but it's just funny. We are not your typical podcast. I mean, you're in a living room.
Yeah, look at me. Like
we're kind of like
living room that I used to work out, which has got garbage all over the table because it's all stuff that like I have to move every time I box, and like.
We're
right
retro.
now I was literally grabbing garbage to get it off my table so I could podcast tonight because we're just scrambling right now.
Yeah, we're a retro podcast. I mean, remember when people like they used to do it in their bed? The bed was in the background. It wasn't even made.
Right?
It was just sitting there, and like you knew you were in some kid's bedroom or something. It was so like weird and creepy.
It's so funny.
Informationally creepy.
I'm really anal about what I show people. I don't even like to show this, right? Like I wish I wish I had more space for this not to be in the room, because I would remember I used to have a
screen.
I used to just have a white wall back here, and like I put up the shelves, and people don't realize this because they don't see the rest of the room, but like I had no other place to store that stuff. It was actually in a cabinet above my computer, and I ran out of space up there. So I was like, I need to figure this out, and that was the only available wall for me to mount shelves on. Same thing with the shelving. I needed to put my amp somewhere, and it was the only place in the condo where I actually had space to do it, because we've outgrown this place. Like,
you need to get a house.
Yeah, it's just that right now the housing market here is like horrendous.
Oh yeah.
And that's not going to happen for at least a year. So we're just kind of like living in limbo. But as far as things I bought, I just bought this. This is literally it for the last 2 weeks. I just don't.
As you know, I pre-ordered something. We're not going to say anything until later, but I also ordered, it's not here yet, a thing to stand on while I'm on stage, which will be interesting when you see it. It'll be quite funny. I bought it tongue-in-cheek, but for purpose, and that's to have something to stand on.
So when someone says get on a stool, you can actually get on a stool?
Well, no, you know how like your feet are on concrete most of the time, or on really hard surfaces.
You bought one of the mats that the anti-fatigue mats.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I bought one that's I bought one from Joe Bonamassa's store, so it's
funny.
So it's got the 5 guitarist positions on it, and so I'm looking forward to having that.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, the 5 guitar players.
Can we talk Joe B for just a second?
Sure.
I was having an interesting conversation with my wife yesterday, actually, about Joe B, because I'm a musician and I rant. Okay, so we're in the car, and I was talking about like I'm not a super huge fan of like the Joe Bonamassa music that's coming out right now. But but like I totally respect him as a guitar player, and like there is a great deal of good stuff in that catalog. And when I first became aware of him was like right before John Henry came out, and like I saw the shift from pre-Joe to John Henry, right? And I was like, this is weird. But his business model, man, like I just explaining to people how that worked. Like people just told him he couldn't do it, so he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna rent this place anyway. I'm just gonna put up the money out of my pocket and do it." And it's worked out really well for him because he's fantastically rich compared to a lot of his contemporaries.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he's probably spent most of that on Dumbles and Les Pauls, but I'm joking, of course. I have no idea what he's worth or what he's spent on what, but to have the collection that he has, he's got some money put away somewhere, and he's cut out the middleman, so there's got to be some extra cash in it for him. But that was his business model, was to take the as a matter of fact, now folks like Eric Gales, and we both know who Eric Gales is, go to him to record their albums. Yeah, and him and Josh Smith both, actually.
Yeah.
And they're all, I think that
matter of fact,
the blues guys are all like sort of the modern blues renaissance players that you would have right now, that you would consider to be right now. Those guys get along. They're very tight knit, and I'm sure he's giving them advice on how to run business and everything else, because how else are you going to make that shit work? I mean, you got to share.
Well, yeah, and there was was it Samantha Fish or something like that? There was a few other musicians that he's been involved with that he's been helping out. So, and I'm sure there's some money changing hands. I'm not saying that Joe's doing this out of the kindness of his heart. That's
no. I think we all sort of understand that Joe is making some money off this.
Right. But that said, there is, like you said, there is a thing, and I know Josh Smith was involved in the record that they recently put together. So it's pretty cool. And Josh Smith actually and Joe Bonamassa are there. So
yeah, they're like good friends anyway. Like they're on the phone all the time. And hell, freaking Joe's like, here, take this 59 on the road with you.
Yeah, that's
here, have $100,000. Don't spend it all in one place.
Yeah, don't drop it.
Yeah.
So we should talk a little bit about news first, I guess. So there was a couple of concerts recently. Were very interesting. One, I'm going to let you take over in about 4 seconds, because one was the Hawkins, the unfortunate loss of Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah.
Yep. Go for it.
Wembley Stadium, right? How many? Jim, look up how many people Wembley holds, because I'm curious.
I want to say it's 80,000.
Yeah, it's like 80 or 100,000. It's ridiculous. Yep. It's one of the biggest. It is, I believe, still the biggest venue in England. And they had the Taylor Hawkins benefit concert over there. They're going to do one here in the States too, is my understanding. But I don't know if it's the same performers or what. Like, I don't have all the details on that. But anyway, this happened over the weekend. I actually caught it through YouTube advertised it through Rick Beato. So I just I searched YouTube to find the actual video.
It was in the middle between you and me. It's 90,000. I thought it was 80. You said it was 100.
It's up there. Like, it's a lot of people.
But of course, there's going to be some seats that aren't in view. That's why I said I think it seats 80,000 for a concert. But
it's something like that. Yeah, because I remember Queen played there and they sold it out like 3 or 4 nights in a row, and it was like, that's the kind of magic DVD you can get, and it's pretty wild. But so anyway, just kind of like thinking about this and evaluating this, like for what it is, they did their thing, and like the video that you're gonna see going around is Wolfgang Van Halen. So I all right, so like, so I'm gonna just preface this, and like, there's been a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and other places kind of shitting all over Wolfgang's playing, right?
He can't buy the people to just stop. This is why we can't have nice things.
Right.
It really is. It really is. He was freaking awesome.
So no, but I was talking like before this, right?
Yeah.
So he comes out, he does a medley of songs, and with Justin Hawkins of The Darkness, right, on vocals,
Yeah.
which was like awesome. A big thing for a lot of people. Were like, holy shit, that guy can actually sing. It's not just that one song. Yeah.
Yeah, he can sing.
You know, they've only got like 7 albums you need to catch up on. So anyway, he comes out.
And the only one that isn't great is the second one.
Yeah, and well,
I'll give it a
there's reasons for that. You can find out. You can do your own research. There's actually reasons.
Justin will tell you why
there was an intense drug problem involved. But anyway, they did their performance, right, and then they did Hot for Teacher, and of course, like that song is all right. There are a lot of Van Halen songs in the catalog that a lot of younger players could probably pick up pretty quickly, right? But that song is not one of them. That's a song that turns, young children into adults. So,
in more ways than one.
Yeah. So I actually, I learned it, and I have kind of dusted it off a couple of times, and I dusted it off about 2 years ago, and it gave me tendonitis or something. Like it really fucked up my hand. I couldn't stretch for like a week. It was ridiculous. That intro tapping thing is just hats off. Like, I don't know how he played it and got away with it, except that he had abnormally large hands. So anyway, Wolfgang comes out, does the tapping part. Now, I will say this, he's a little bit behind the beat from the audio and the clip, but we'll dive into that a little bit.
But could be several reasons for that.
Yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit. But performance is great, nails the solo, pretty much notes for notes it too, which is like even more ridiculous because even Eddie wasn't like trying to note for note things. And then that was like the end of the thing. Like people were like, oh my God, he can actually play.
Well, I think the reason he note for noted it, and I don't think he'd ever do that again.
Yeah,
is because of remember the last time him and Mammoth and they were on Fallon or something, and they came out and everybody was like, oh, see, he's not that great, blah blah blah. He didn't get what his dad has.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, though. Like, it's one thing if you don't like the music he's putting out, but it's another for you to sit there and pretend like the dude can't play because you don't know. You don't know.
That's right.
And he showed people, hey, like, yeah, my dad taught me basically, and like.
Yeah, he did the guitar version of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just said, "Yep, you guys, I can do this, and now I don't ever have to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I did it. I did the music of my dad, a la Zappa,
in an appropriate setting, right?
That's right.
Like, and then moved on." And I think that was I think that's an incredibly powerful message. I'm glad to see him empowered a little bit to be able to like step into those shoes and be like, yeah, that's my dad, damn it. Like, kind of like, shut up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
This is why I said we can't.
Right? And you see the same thing with like Michael Jackson's kids. It's like Paris Jackson's working on an album right now. And it's going to be a big album, regardless of,
That's right.
So like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, because Paris is, his daughter, that's what's going to happen. So
this is why I said we can't have nice things.
Right. But people are going to talk and be like, she doesn't deserve that.
Yeah,
right.
Like,
well, nobody in show business deserves what they deserve. If you haven't been paying attention, most of it's fucking blind luck.
Right. So. That's exactly right. How many famous people have had kids who put out an album that sucked? And how many people have had kids who famous people themselves who have put out an album that sucked? So it's not just sycophant. You get all this. It's not sycophant.
People like
what is it?
wanting the original back and that kind of stuff too.
Right.
Nepotism
okay. If you were Wolfgang Van Halen. I was talking to a friend today. If you were Wolfgang Van Halen, you were born. You're sitting at home. You're in diapers. And who do you hear playing guitar in the next room? I mean, it's just the most amazing thing. It is literally ingrained into your skull. It is what you hear every effing day of your life.
And there's a genetic component too.
That's right.
You are literally the genes of this person, and so it
predisposes
you to being interested in it. Because that's the other thing.
That's right.
I got 2 kids. who have a lot of talent, could probably play music or whatever. They have no desire to. They hear me play all the time. They have no desire to, and it just has to do with like, you know, a predisposition for it, right?
That's
And
right.
that's fine.
That's right.
So I
But
still hold a candle that one of them will eventually be like, yeah,
yeah,
we'll play.
yeah, me too. My days, my days are waning versus waxing for sure. But what I was getting at is this: he lived it like every single day, and it's just like the Bee Gees, the vocal harmonies that they had, or the Carter sisters, or whoever. Those were the voices they heard every single day. They grew up together. They grew up singing together. They grew the Jackson 5. I mean, we mentioned the Jackson earlier. It's just something that does come because you're in it. It's not because necessarily, although that is part of it, the genetic code that's written into your genes, part of it. But there's another part of it. You could go nature versus nurture. I think there's a 1 + 1 in there, and so you're predisposed to be good. And he could have just as easily become a stoner and said, "Yeah, fuck you, Dad. I'm going to go off and do my own thing," and created a shitty grunge band that never got off the ground. And I'm not saying grunge bands are shitty. I'm just making a different type of band. So he could have been anything, but instead he chose to go down that path, and I think. I applaud him for it, and the reason I said we can't have nice things, that thing was about Taylor Hawkins. Can people just not be negative about stuff?
Yeah, like why do you have to have this big conversation about, you know, him? Like,
right?
Well, let's talk about what happened to Taylor because that's important.
That's one of the sad. He was anorexic toward the end.
Yeah, I mean,
the guy, he was literally anorexic. There were people that were, talking about that. Of course, there were some drugs involved, but, I'm not going to judge that. I didn't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get on a radio show every day and then do a show until, whenever, and not go to, and then do meet and greets and go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and do the same thing the next day. Yeah. So I can't,
none of us can place ourselves into those shoes, but
no.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just an interesting thing I wanted to talk about. If you haven't seen the performance, you should check it out.
Yes.
It's definitely worth watching. I think I didn't watch the Rick Beato video, and I'll tell you guys why.
I did.
Because I didn't want to watch 15 minutes of commentary wrapped around like a 3-minute song. Like it was just like not what I wanted to do.
There was a lot of there's a music video. Everybody, if you get a chance, check out August is Falling. Just look up August is Falling. Watch it. It's a joke. It's a real song wrapped in a joke. And it's not a like Weird Al kind of thing. It's actually a good song, but written as a joke because this guy does the Pat Finnery, who's the one that does the thing. He released the song under August is Falling, the band, and the name of the song is August is Falling. And they put out an EP, and it's all in tongue in cheek, but it's supposed to be an emo band because somebody gave them crap about doing this song sucks. He does a Rick Beato opposite, why the song stinks instead of why the song is great. And he did Emo Girl by the Machine Gun Kelly. And so, anyway, check it out if you get a chance. But the point I was making is everybody's doing reaction videos to August is Falling on purpose to get it hyped up because YouTube, he's showing how algorithm YouTube doesn't know shit. YouTube doesn't know any better, and it's throwing it in everybody's faces, right? And so he's trying to get this hype train that shouldn't exist, and he's doing it on purpose. I mean, he's being very open and honest about it, and because he's not trying to make money on it, he's trying to make this thing look what YouTube doesn't know. It just hypes up whatever it thinks you're going to like, right? So anyway, one person did a great Beato thing with it, and he's like, "Let me tell you why," and then they put in "August is Falling." It's a great song, and then you see him go,
yeah.
And he's like,
all right. Because I'm gonna point something out. Like this has been said to me by a show listener several times that I've talked about Rick Beato. I could give two shits what Rick Beato thinks about anything. He just doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
And I don't, and by that same token, and I'm going to point this out to everybody else, there are people who care what Rick Beato thinks, but there is no one that gives a shit what I think, and that is fantastic. I enjoy a lot of freedom from that, and I'm happy. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's my point. That you know, but he did. I didn't really. I shouldn't say I watched the whole thing. I watched a few minutes, and he had that thing where he just sits there and listens to it, and then goes, and I was like.
And gets excited about it. And it's like, okay, but it's like, I don't want to. I want to watch the damn performance. I'm already a musician. I don't need your commentary.
That's right. Like, I don't need you to tell me it was good. I want to watch it, and I wanted to watch. He didn't even care about Justin Hawkins singing. I want to see the whole thing. I wanted to. Yeah. But I watched it live on television. I just happened to be at somebody's house, and I was like, "Hey, what is that?" And it was the thing, and we watched it. So.
All right. So let's talk custom built guitars. So we talked sort of about like my fantasy when I was a kid and being like,
oh wait, I got one more concert.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
All right, the last concert. Okay, so South Park did a 25th anniversary concert, and I recommend people watch it only because if you enjoy your art to be again performance art, it was performance art all the way through, and it was hilarious.
Was Primus involved?
Primus was there, all three of them, and it was great. And they did the song, and they showed how they originally pitched it, and how they had to speed it up. And then he did the one when they went into the fourth grade, and he played a thing that looked like a bass but wasn't a bass, and it had like a handle with a thing, and I can't remember what he called it, but it was like and that's how he going down South Park, and it was for the fourth grade thing. And he did all the versions of the South Park theme song. They did a couple of their own songs because they Primus and Ween and Rush, well, the surviving members of Rush were there, and they did Closer to the Heart with Geddy on bass and Alex on guitar, and they had the drummer was Matt Stone from South Park. And so that was really cool. And like I said, Ween was there, and Ween did a couple of originals of their own stuff. And of course, Primus did some of their songs, which was really cool. And so they had that break. And of course, they had a song that what I loved was, for me, not only Kyle's mom, because my wife hates that because my son's name is Kyle, and yeah, don't do it, Kyle. Don't do it. And then there was the America, fuck yeah, and
but that's not even from South Park.
It's from their movie,
Team America War Police.
And they did a lot of stuff from the other stuff too. That was what was cool. They brought in the Team America stuff. They did the South Park stuff. They did the Rush stuff. And the Primus and the Ween. And so if you're a fan of any of that kind of music, it was a fun time.
All right, now we're gonna switch gears. We are gonna talk custom built guitars. So I sort of talked about my my young. I think I maybe told you this before the show. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. My fantasy as a young guitarist when I first started playing was like everybody had custom guitars, and then really I found out later that it was like nah, not really custom, just fucking old. Anyway, I have a proclivity for this stuff. We're gonna talk about John Cruz, and I don't know what I fair warning for the audience. I don't know what we're talking about here, but we all know John Cruz had a little bit of trouble in 2020. So I think before we actually get into custom guitars, I think we maybe should talk a little bit about full tone closing. So we don't know if full tone's closing has anything to do with the anti-hate campaign that was like sort of run against him as a result of his comments back in 2020 during the riots. Riots and demonstrations, let's be real. But I was like, I look at that situation, I go, like, who cares? Honestly, it was like the littlest. I for a minute, for like a minute and a half, I was like, what full tone pedals do I want to buy? And then it was like, because I knew that like they were closing their doors, and I was like, none of them. That's all right, because I just don't like, they don't make anything I want anymore. I used to be a real big fan of the OCD, and then I realized it sucked. So I stopped.
I can't believe This is what I can't believe, and we're going to go to the custom guitars because this is part of it. I cannot believe what people are suddenly charging for fucking full tone pedals right now online. I saw an OCD for $400. I'm like, you couldn't get $40 for that 2 weeks ago.
Wait. That's not true, because there are different versions of that pedal, and there are two very highly sought after versions that do command prices.
I know, but I'm talking about in general now. I'm not just talking about the regular one. Now, of course, it could have come down fast, and maybe it never sold, but it wasn't one of the special. Like, there's a version 2 something one
it's version 2, and there's version 1, and then
version 1 series for version 1.
Well, so there's really there's like 9 versions of the pedal now. And there's an unofficial numbering scheme, and so I'm not going to get too deep into it because you're right. Version 1.4 is not highly desirable, but version 1.2 and 1.1 are
right. And the version 2s are that kind of money. But right now, the regular or version 1 series 2, sorry, the version 2 right now are going for $200. Well, they're being listed for $200, and that's from, I'll bet you money, and that's just a regular, that's an out of the box machine. $279, $250, $338. You've got to be freaking pulling my leg.
Yeah.
The only full tone pedal, and I'll just wait for the bullshit thing to go down, and I don't even need it right now. I don't even need it at all. And that's, I was thinking about getting a Clyde Deluxe wah.
There are better wahs. Quite frankly,
that's the only one that I thought about getting, and
I own one.
Yeah,
I do not miss it. I have not missed it since I sold it. I actually really liked the Jerry Cantrell wall in comparison from because that's actually what I replaced it with, from Dunlop, and that was not expensive.
Right. Well, I was looking at the custom one. It's white. It's got the thing.
I had that. Yes, that's the one I had.
And that's the only. But my point is, that's the only pedal I thought about, and that was a $250 pedal, give or take. And now people are trying to get like $1,500 for it. I'm like, yeah, kiss my ass.
I apologize. My shitty neighbor is ramming their bass down my throat right now.
Can't hear it.
Yeah, I good. Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, no, I can't hear it.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody's trying to bang in my door right now. So
yeah. So I don't see any reason to rush out by, like, what are you going to get, a full drive? I mean, the only thing, and Josh Scott said this, he said, the only thing that they were putting out that I shouldn't say the only thing, he was very nice about it, but the big thing they were putting out that nobody wants to do, the guy I think from Vertex Effects said the same thing. Nobody wants to do this, and that's the tape delay.
Yeah.
Because they said there's no way, both of them said there's no way he was making money on that. As much as he charged for it.
No, he wasn't. No way he wasn't. He had a very exclusive clientele list for that, and you had to get on a wait list. You weren't getting one unless it was in stock at like Sweetwater or something. You would wait on a tape delay from him. I remember somebody telling me they waited for 2 years and never got one.
Yeah. And if you're on the waiting list that long, you probably won't get one now.
Well,
there's no way.
Once he stopped doing the EP one, and he started doing the solid state one, I was like, fuck this, I don't want it. Yeah. Because the desirable one for me was the tube one.
Yep.
Which that's not the case for everybody. A lot of people like the TTE as well. But I'm like, if I'm gonna do that, I'll just go buy a Space Echo. Like I can buy a real Space Echo for the same amount of money. So, it's like didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And Space Echoes, there are people that like maintain those. In fact, I think show listener Jason Fuzzmonger might have a Space Echo.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
And I've got his pedal. Listen, Jason, if you're listening, I want to make this really clear to you.
You still have that pedal?
I have been so guilty of the last like 3 weeks of realizing I need to get another box. There were extenuating circumstances for the box that I did get. Something happened to it, which I won't. It involved my cats. We're not gonna get into it any more than that. It was not.
Let's just say you don't want to smell it.
Not a good situation. And so I need to get you your creepy face back, like really badly. I am going to try to make that a priority as I move into the next 2 or 3 weeks because I've had that thing for way too long. I've had it like 4 years now. And I feel really bad about it. So I'm going to try to do something extra special to make it up to you. And I'm not going to disclose what that is, but I've already thought about it, and I'm going to take care of you. So don't worry about it. I will get you that pedal. You're going to get it back. Don't worry. I know those are incredibly rare, and I feel so bad for not having gotten it back to you. So you need a personal conversation here. Anyway, so I just wanted to comment because, like, talking about Full Tone briefly, just because the racial connotation of that, and then the fact that ties into John Cruz leaving Fender back in 2020 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I literally don't know what Mike Fuller said, and I really don't care.
We covered it on the show. Basically, he just made a big post about how he didn't agree with a community of people like busting up stores and stuff when they didn't do anything to them or whatever, and it was like, I don't know, it was all misconstrued, and like both sides were kind of like a little over the top on it. So.
Well, as soon as online arguments are tough.
Well, but you also have to realize he's a polarizing figure in the community because he had been a known asshole. And
right.
So
depending on right.
The only other thing I want to comment on with regards to Full Tone before we move on. Simple thing. He's not going out of business. He said, I'm going to continue to make small runs of pedals. And they're going to be very high dollar items is what's going to be.
Right. He's just selling off the building and selling off the inventory they've got.
Yeah.
But they've had their inventory on special for a long time. I was getting emails all the time that said, Full Tone's having a sale. I'm like, wow, that's our local.
Nobody was buying their shit. And I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think it had to do with the fact that, like, they weren't boutique anymore. Nobody looked at them and went, shit, I want Full Tone pedals. They were just like, oh, there's Full Tone. It's another brand like Keeley and Wampler, you know?
Well, yeah. Yeah. And the only Full Tone pedal I ever had was a Full Drive 2 back a long time ago.
I wouldn't have minded having a Full Drive 2, but you can build one super easily. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's like big deal.
And there's a lot of pedals that cover that ground, so it's not a big deal. So, like I said, in the OCD is something that some people like. Like I said, there's a certain version of it some people like, some people don't. So whatever you like. Some people don't like Tube Screamers. Some people don't like Marshalls. So
yeah, I know a lot of people that swear by the OCD. It's just not my thing.
Yep. So yeah, John Cruz has officially, I guess, opened the doors to his custom shop.
Right.
And
post his departure.
Right. Post the departure from
the next topic, which is Fender.
Yeah, and again, he said something that was insensitive. But that's why I don't go on Twitter, because you can't tell a joke, and somebody's going to be sensitive about it. And I could tell a joke about anything. I tell a joke about this hat, somebody's going to go nuts about this hat. Look, so I just don't care.
It's kind of irrelevant. Like at this point, it's kind of irrelevant. But he's starting his custom shop. So go on. Right.
So he started his custom shop. And I was watching the video. It's more about this. I'm watching the video and watching the wear patterns that they're putting into the guitars. Mm-hmm. And then right after that, I saw another video of Fender custom shop and the wear patterns they put on the neck. And I'm like, they look alike. They all look alike. It's like the same person has been playing the same guitar over and over. And then, and of course, somebody's going to say to me, no, Jim, there's like this slight difference. See this one scratch? That scratch isn't in that guitar. It's in this guitar. But in other words, I'm looking at these things, and you know my feelings on pre-worn guitars. But they're my feelings, and I don't push them off on anybody else. But I'm like, there's nothing different. And I had seen a video a while back about a musician, a famous musician, I can't remember who it was, who had a guitar that they didn't want to take on the road anymore. And they said, oh, well, I don't want to take this guitar on the road. I want to say it was a Strat or something like that. And so they were like, well, I want to put it away. And Fender went, I want to say it was Fender. It might have been Gibson. It might have been a Les Paul. I don't know. It might have actually been a Charvel. It might have been during that damn Charvel thing. The Charvel documentary. Anyway, they said, "Oh, well, I don't want to take it on the road anymore." And the guy said, "Oh, well, I can make you one that'll look exactly like that one, and you won't be able to tell." And so that was kind of the impetus of the custom shop.
Yes, Keith Richards.
Worn guitars. Was it him? I don't know.
He was the guy that started the whole thing with the relics.
Yeah. And so there was this pre-relic thing, and then it was like, I want it to look and sound like and I can understand that. You get a pair of, like, I just got sneakers, right? And this coming back, I just got sneakers. I went to Dick's because I know Dick's was the one that sold my guitar, or I mean my sneakers, and I buy Brooks sneakers. And I go to Dick's, I go to buy my Brooks, and I just take the shoe off. I go, I want this shoe. I don't make that shoe anymore. It's that way every fucking time I go to buy a new shoe.
Jim,
it's like,
it's fashion.
I want. It's not a fashion. It's a sneaker. It runs. I run in a sneaker.
Jim, that shit changes year to year based on fashion.
And so I can't get but I don't care if it's blue or green or orange or purple or whatever. I want a sneaker to feel the same.
I get that you don't, but they know everyone else does.
They don't have the sneaker that I want when I go back. It's like, it's as if Hanes just stopped making underwear for me anymore. I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous that what I'm getting at is this, though. And the reason I go after the same sneaker every time is because I know how that sneaker feels when I put it on my foot, right? And so Keith Richards knew what his guitar felt like, and they created that guitar for his feel, for what it felt like to him. But I'm like, all these guitars are pretty much wearing exactly the same. You can look at the backs of the neck, and I can tell you where the the back of the neck wear is going to be. I can look at the fretboard, and I can tell you, okay, these frets right here, they're going to gouge a little bit of this one. It's like, it's exactly the same. You can look at it and go, oh, yep. Everybody that gets a pre-worn guitar plays the A major pentatonic, or the A minor pentatonic. Sorry.
All right.
I'm just saying, it's like, it's not really custom. To me, it's not custom. It's just worn.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's talk. Because I want to point out a couple things that I'm sure they've occurred to you, but I sort of like inform this a little bit more. So you're saying that they're all identical. They're not really identical, right? So like they have the same wear pattern. There's always upper arm wear. There's always thumb wear on the back of the neck where the thumb writes specifically. There's always a cigarette burn on the headstock. There's the things that like you would expect to see.
The belt buckle rash on the back.
The things you would expect to see when you go to the store and pick up that 61 Strat that's hanging on the wall for $10,000. Which is what I'm pointing out is like the reason they do that is because that's what you see on real ones. Like they're all like that.
But not alike.
To an extent. Well, so we're gonna
to an extent. I'll give you that.
We're gonna talk more about that too, because and I feel like we've covered this on the show before, but it's worth saying like they have a very specific wear pattern in mind when they approach this because they've seen a lot of them. I mean, that's essentially like this is if you were to take an average, right? They're going to be basically average wear of, whatever condition they're selling them in. So like Fender, for example, because we're going to talk about Fender too, but I'm sure John Cruz's custom shop is going to be doing the same thing where they have like Closet Classic, and then they have Light Relic, and then they have Heavy Relic, and so if you think about it from that perspective, like the Heavy Relic is going to be the most different, okay? Because the amount of damage that guitars suffer when they're Heavy Relic is just, it's like, why do they even bother to finish the damn things? And then like the Light Relic is going to have basically the average play wear. It's going to be average, and it's going to be so average that it's even going to have it in the same spots. And I'm gonna pick on some other companies as a part of this conversation about John Cruz and the Relic thing a little bit here, because like Gibson, for example, their Relics. Okay, Gibson.
They literally have a template. They literally have,
but they suck. No, and they do have a template, but if you've had enough of them in your hands, the checking's not exactly the same. Like that the wear is slightly different on each one, but it's in the same spots, and it's like very in the same spot, like the template says where it's going to be, right?
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm pointing out is like, all right, I don't have a problem with them saying comfortable guitars have upper arm wear. They have the thumb contour on the back of the neck and where it sits specifically. These 5 frets typically get gouged more than others because of specific playing situations or because the guitar falls over. And you know, players in the 80s put their cigarettes up there. Like I okay, so like that's a thing. I understand why they would go down that path. Now if you're saying wear is identical, I'd like to cover that more in the Fender segment. Maybe we'll kind of wrap John Cruz up and we'll move over into Fender for a second because
yeah, that's really
So let me change the indicator while I'm talking. So Fender has been caught using CNC equipment to mimic the wear patterns in the custom shop, and the way that their CNC equipment actually works for like doing the rough work for the finish is basically like they have templates in the system and they have a certain amount of them and they mix and match. So like they might use the front of this guitar and the back of this guitar and the side of this one, and then that's a complete custom shop piece, right?
Yep.
In the case of like an Yngwie Malmsteen absolute signature thing where they're matching playwear on the duck caster and all that, on the duck, like then okay, they made that template. That's how they did that. They started out with a template and then they went and finished it by hand. Same thing with the EVH, the Frankenstein, that was the custom shop level Frankenstein. And by the way, the production level Frankenstein looks great. I saw one the other day and I was like, hell yeah, like it looks really good. So that's a thing unto itself, right? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Fender has gotten so granular that they aren't doing this in a custom fashion. But let's stop and let's talk price here for a minute. So if Novo, right? Cirrus J or whatever, which is relic. They are poly finishes. They are not nitro finishes.
Yep.
Which is actually more involved for relicing a poly finish like that. Those are a hell of a value for, I think, what, $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah, $5,000.
One that is heavy relic, you know. And the reason why I say that is because like Fender relic guitars go from 4,000 and up. Okay. You want to get into the heavy relic stuff, you're looking at $5,000. Masterbuilt's more than that. But like if you wanted to go, let's say you go the route of you want to go to, I'm trying to think who's got a good custom shop, like and what their prices are. So John Suhr, if you want to go to Suhr and have Suhr build you a custom guitar, you're looking at like more than $10,000.
Okay.
And that's why I'm like, these are value models. Like these are, so the custom shop, first off, let's get this out of our head. The custom shop is actually not just a custom shop. It is a production shop and a custom shop. Same thing with
That's
Murphy Lab over at Gibson. It is a production shop and a custom shop.
That's right.
Most people cannot afford the custom shop services. When you're getting into that $10,000 plus stratosphere, which by the way, even the Fender custom shop will make guitars from scratch for you. You're going to pay. Okay. Same thing over at Gibson. You're going to pay and they'll do it. And sky's limit. You can do whatever you want. That's possible, right? They'll tell you whether it's possible or not and they'll build it.
It is in limits. That's right.
Which is why they take guitars like that monster that they made with like 15 necks, to NAMM because they want to point out like, we'll do anything. We don't give a fuck. Like, it's kind of a showpiece. It says like, hey, you want this? Like, you know, so I guess when you look at it from that perspective, John Cruz and doing the relics that are like basically identical to what, you know, the same wear patterns that you get over at Fender. I guess identical really has to do with how granular you want to get. Because you even pointed that out. Really has a lot to do with what level are you paying and what do you want done to the guitar. And that's another thing to point out. It's like Fender will do modern style guitars right out of the custom shop. And from what I've heard, they're actually cheaper than relics because they don't have as many hours in them.
Right.
So I know, like,
because they finish them and finish. They don't finish them and then break them.
Yeah, well, and I think you can even go poly over there too, which is like another thing that people don't realize is that some people want poly guitars, and it's a weird like situation. Fender Custom Shop will literally let you do anything, and there's a price attached to it, right? And if you go, so when you go to the store and you go to you go to the Guitar Center and they got the Platinum Room in there, and you go in there and there's custom shop stuff hanging up. That's not really the same custom shop stuff in the same way, because that wasn't, Guitar Center didn't call them up and be like, "Yo, I got this idea for a guitar." Like they have a stock model that they've ordered. And maybe they have some color variations, and they said, we want 10 of these, 10 of these, and 10 of these. And most of those are if they're, they're journeyman relic kind of things or whatever, they're not necessarily, master built or anything like that. So master building is like one guy built the whole guitar, right?
Yep.
And that's where you start getting into those $10,000 services, right? And yeah, that's basically what I'm pointing out here. It's like there's different levels of this, and I don't really agree. So like some people have said my G&L is custom, right? Because I custom ordered it. Well, that's not exactly custom because I picked from the options that were available to me. I didn't call them up and be like, "Yo guys, I want a 24 3/4 inch neck. I want, basically the things I got in my Warmoth." And even that, I picked from a list of options. I didn't say no, not a 24 3/4 inch neck. I want a 24-inch scale neck. And I want, I want a humbucker pickup, but I just want it basically 2 single coils in the same slot. And like, sky's limit, right? And we're not just talking replicas. You can do pretty much whatever you can dream up. That's how things like the American flag guitars get made over at Fender, or the guitars that like the map guitar that came out of Gibson, I'm sure started off in the custom shop. Somebody said, "Let's make a map, that'll be cool," and Gibson's like, "Sure." And they make this map and they're like, "You guys mind if we make this a production model? This sounds stupid." Like but that's even the reverse V, right, could have been something that was like a customer was like, "This will be funny." A joker customer who's got $20,000 laying around is like, "Let's make a guitar, let's make a V, but let's reverse it." And Gibson's like, "You got $20,000, like
let's do it."
Absolutely. At some point they stop asking questions when you throw enough money their way. So I'm just thinking about like this from that perspective, is that what you're seeing when you see those identical wear patterns is essentially, which I call them wear patterns because we know that the checking is different on every Gibson that goes out of the shop. It's different but shitty. We've talked about this on the show. I've had several SGs, custom SGs in my hands, and I looked out of the checking and I was like, "This is obviously not a real one." Like, there's no way in hell this is a real one. The finish looks great, and then all of a sudden there's like a line in the middle of it where somebody did with a razor blade that like went all the way through the finish into the body. You're going, "Damn, dude, did you hit that with a hammer?" Like, so that's all I'm saying. I that's been my impression too, to be completely frank. And the road worn guitars, do you remember those, the production road worns that Fender was doing? I think they were, I don't know if they're still doing those or not now, but they were testing the waters
from Mexico.
On that. Yeah, they were testing the waters on that because they wanted to see, because I'm sure at some point they floated the idea of doing an entire vintage line that way. And they were testing the waters on whether they could get away with identical wear patterns on. And by the way, those road worn guitars has got some of the worst looking play wear I've ever seen. They're comfortable, I'll give them that, but and I think that's really what it was more about. But the way they looked, like, nobody's gonna look at that and think that's a real relic. No one. I mean, even non-players are gonna look at that and go, "It looks kind of fake."
This is my only thing. So when you take a guitar that's been reliced for without you in mind. Okay, like I'm 5'6", right, and I've got a certain place my arm's going to go, and so on and so forth when it comes to a guitar, right? If I'm going to go custom shop and I'm going to go relic, I want it to be a relic that looked like I reliced it, right? But if it's got, now you take a guy like Rhett Shaw, he's got to be over 6 feet tall, and he's tall and skinny. I'm short, and so our wear patterns would be different. And what makes me laugh is because they're going with an average. The average is just that, and so it's like saying there's a one size fits all when it comes to a wear pattern and a wearing of the guitar as a whole. You know what I mean? And so that's why I was saying that I would think that you would want a wear that would wear to where you would wear. How's that for fruit salad or worry salad?
Let me poke holes in your boat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do people buy vintage guitars?
Yeah, I know. And that guitar was worn by somebody else. That's absolutely right. But there's a couple reasons people buy vintage guitars, and they don't always go with wear. Sometimes people buy vintage guitars. Let's face it, a lot of the people buying some of the older guitars are buying them as quote unquote investment pieces.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yep. That's some. I'm not saying all. Okay. So we got some of them that go that way, right? Investment pieces. They put them in a case. They stick them in a closet, and they hope they make more money than it would have made in a stock or bond. Okay. Now, and they hope they don't get stolen. Then you've got the person that buys them because it was cool. It was cool looking. I was born that year. Like I've been looking at 64 Strats. Okay. Let's just say I have to be not in need of another car before I go buy a 64 Strat.
With the prices they are right now, like as of today.
Right. And so 64 Strat, and you know what's funny? If I could take it out of that for just a second, a lot of 64 Strats I'm looking at, other than the ones that are custom shop war, most of them look pretty damn good. The wear patterns they're not that bad. They were either well built or these are a lot of closet queens on the thing. I mean, I've seen some that obviously had wear, but they weren't as worn, and that's the thing. I'm like, okay, there's a 64 Strat, there's a 64 Strat, there's a 64 Strat, and they're all real 64 Strats, but they don't look anything in the terrible wear patterns that I see on the, out of the custom shops. And the same, I'll go with Gibson too, because another guitar I was looking at was 64 ES335s. Same thing. It's like, well, the amount of wear for a guitar that's been being played for 50 years isn't as bad as I would have thought.
There's a reason the 64 looks great, Jim.
Does it? What?
Poly.
Yeah, because they were poly, right?
Yeah.
And it was poly all the way back then. And so
they stopped in 63. So you should have a luck.
And nothing good was made in my year. No, the 60. I understand the 64 335s were good, but anyway, the point that I'm making is I look at Telly Strats and 335s made in my year, because I don't want an SG from that year. I'm not impressed with Gibson at that point. It's like I'm looking at, or at least in the 335 category, I'm looking at these things and I'm going, geez, they're not as bad. And so that just makes it funnier when I look at a poly, or not even a poly, I'm sorry, a 64 reissue Strat, and I go, look at the wear on that thing, and it's nitro blown, and it wasn't nitro blown before. Not that I've got it again. I don't care. You buy whatever you want. You spend your money on NFTs for all I care. I'm just saying that I would think I would want a wear pattern that was closer to what I wanted, and so the other reason someone might, so there's the birth year and there's the investment, and then the other reason is because they want something that's worn in. They want the old pair of shoes, the old pair of jeans. That was a big thing when I was a kid, by the way. The 80s, people in the 80s were buying jeans from the '60s. They were off the rack, go to Goodwill and buy your jeans type thing. And I think that still goes on today. I mean, everybody that remembers Madonna and those guys were wearing the dresses and the clothes that were off the Goodwills. That was a thing. It's always been a look, and it's always been a thing. So yeah, there is that, and then there's the cool factor, and that's the last one. There's just the coolness factor. Hey, look at this! I've got this thing from 1955 or whatever.
All right,
and I've got one.
All right, I'm going to poke some more holes in your boat. Because
go ahead.
Because
there's no reason.
You brought up the investor first, right? So like the investors came later. There was a lot of these guitars being traded in the 1980s, specifically actually in Austin, Texas, in that area where it's like where the big guitar shows started. And people would buy. I mean, you'd go down there and you could buy a 61 Strat for a couple $100.
Austin and Dallas,
they had old, right? And it started to develop this reputation. By the late 80s, they were starting to get up in price. Things were over $1,000 in some cases. And then all of a sudden, like, investors got wind of it. And we had, because in the late 80s, you had the era of excess, and you had these guys that were managing hedge funds and shit who were like, I'll pay $100,000 for a 59 Les Paul, not knowing that it isn't even real, and then stick it in a vault. And actually, a lot of those guitars have sat in vaults at some point in their life now, which is kind of fucked up. And so, like, there are investors, sure, and I'm sure investors have had their hand in making the market expensive. But just because the market's expensive doesn't mean that they're not desirable. There are a lot of people that buy those guitars for playability. There's a lot of people because they like the specific thing. Like, I like those barely there frets. The fuck is wrong with you?
Not me.
Yeah,
right.
I'm the complete opposite. I buy a 61.
Put some new frets on that damn thing.
Yeah, buy a 61, strip the frets out. I'm like, fuck it. I don't need these.
Pop them frets out. Put some good ones in there.
And then I complain about the tone of what I put in there, right? But that's actually the real reason people are buying these guitars, right? Because they have a specific sound. And I heard it said there was a Studio Pro that I was watching today. They were doing a run through of his studio, and like he had like 30 or 40 guitars sitting there, and some of them, well, he basically said like all of my vintage ones got burned up in a fire. He used to live in Malibu. All my vintage ones got burned up in a fire. So he's like, and then I rebuilt and I bought more vintage guitars, and he's like, then half of those got burnt. So he's like, I just said, fuck it. Like, I'm buying Fender Custom Shop stuff, and I'm buying, because he's like, when players come in, he's like, nobody has ever picked up one of my relic guitars and been like, wow, this doesn't sound like a vintage guitar. And he's like, when I take it to an A&R guy and I play them the record, they're never like, did you use a real 64 Strat on that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no one cares. No one asks that.
That's right.
I totally get that part of it. But like the sound thing, like for some folks, there's a specific vibe and sound that they get from an instrument like that, and they fall in love with it, and that's the one for them. So this guy like Philip Stacey, right? Like the guy's got like 4 guitars he plays. But he has 5 now because Fender actually made him one, and he liked it. He's actually been playing it a lot. But he's got like, I think he's got a 61 and a 63, and he has an old LP Junior as well, which looks like an SG. And those are his primary guitars. And he bought them, and they were, I got to pick out a $10,000 loan to buy one kind of guitars. And so like they're clearly desirable. Most of us, you and I, are not at the level of playing where we should be buying this kind of stuff. We've talked about that on the show before too. This stuff is not marketed to us.
Nope.
And the relic thing, like, I don't expect that to be everybody's cup of tea, and Fender doesn't either, because they make guitars that are not relic. Okay?
Obviously not, right?
And
obviously not, because the larger number is not relic. That's correct.
And even when you consider that Fender Custom Shop is still a part of Fender, like the vast majority of guitars they put out are not even finished in nitro. I mean, so
they're finished in poly, and they're just made to certain specs.
Yeah. So I'm just pointing out, like, look, it's fine if you like relics. It's fine if you
right.
but to your point about the wear pattern stuff, like they know what they're doing. They're hitting a very specific market of people that want that specific pattern. And you know what's really funny? Every heavy relic I look at, I compare it to SRV strat. In my head, I think to myself, like, because that's the most, other than Rory Gallagher's, that's the most worn out celebrity Stratocaster I can think of.
Oh, heck yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That thing is,
so
I don't even know why they put finish on that damn thing, like you said.
If you think Fender doesn't know, if you think Fender doesn't know people are doing that, like, they're trying to sell guitars. You know what I mean? Like, they're not, and so, yeah, maybe you want personal wear, Jim, but a lot of people are just like, I can't afford a vintage one. And so I just want one that looks like that.
But, yeah, and again, I agree with you. But the distance in price, this is the thing that boggles my mind a little bit more. The distance in price in a real vintage Fender Strat and a Strat that was done in the custom shop isn't as far apart as like a Gibson 59 heavy relic from the Murphy lab to a 59 that was real. And that's why, for me, I would think I'd probably try to get to that real one. But then again, not everybody wants to spend twice as much money on it. 9,000 versus 18,000.
Yeah.
Or 20.
Well,
I think I was looking at one that was, just under 18,000 was one I was looking at, and it was really nice. It was real.
But realistically, Jim, should people like you and I be buying $10,000 Strats?
No. I wasn't looking at it for that reason, but I did.
I'm scolding Jim because I'm like, be smart. You don't need that.
I don't even need most of these up here. I put on my Facebook today. Put on my Facebook page today because 5 Watt World. I didn't watch the video. Not gonna. And there's a 1 hour video that 5 Watt World did with Jeff Mackerlane. And he's got how many guitars do you really need? And they got this like circle of guitar, like that you get on a T-shirt. That it's like this circle.
And I'm like, one more, right?
And no, what I put on my Facebook page, I did a screenshot of the thing they had on YouTube, and I put I don't need to watch an hour video to know one. One is all you need. You may want more than one for various reasons, but one is all you need. And
depending on how many tunings you use.
That's something that that's a want. You don't have to have the various tunings.
I would argue if you want to play out, you'll need more than one because you're not going to be wanting to change your. If I was playing in G standard tuning on a guitar, like not G, like open G, and then I had to flip back to standard tuning like three times during a set, yeah, fuck that.
Well, it's your fault. You wrote the damn song in open G, you loser.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. So
well, maybe it's because I wanted to play it with this, Jim.
Yeah, mister. Yeah, and that's and that's a valid point. But and one guy said, well, you got to have an acoustic and electric. I'm like, well, not really, but yeah, I suppose if that's what you want, if you want to play an acoustic, if you want like that guy from the Goo Goo Dolls who has a different tuning for every single song he plays.
Every situation is different, right?
That's right.
And
one of my lizard flies got out.
Oh, I'm willing to admit that. Do you need to go chase him down?
No, so it doesn't kill itself. I'd rather feed it to the damn lizard than. And it's a fly that's this big. So it's not like a little fly.
Oh, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the fact that like you have. So we're here talking about custom shop guitars, right? So behind you have a custom shop Les Paul in that white custom, but you have if you totaled up the value of your Les Pauls, just your Les Pauls, right?
Yep.
You could have bought a 59 historic.
That's right. I could have bought a 59 True Historic with the values of my guitars put together. I could still, if I sold them, which I just can't. I can't sell that one. Even if I sold the other ones, I could get into a 59 Historic, and that's without letting the 335 go.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like. So I mean,
And you're right. I mean, don't get me wrong. And if I let them all go, I could get a 64 Strat and just play that all night. But that's not going to happen.
You couldn't afford the maintenance on a 64 Strat.
I got to be, yeah. It's like buying a 64 and a half Mustang. It's like, well, yes, I have it, and now it will sit in the driveway.
So, like, if you buy, all right, so let's real talk for a second before we switch topics and talk about Sharvel for a minute. If you buy a, let's say, vintage Gibson, right? Like, you buy a 335, one of the ones that's like $40,000. And you have a pot go out. You're like, oh, I'm just going to replace that pot.
Nope.
How the fuck are you just going to, because that pot is going to cost you $1,000 to get a replacement installed correctly.
And there's more chance of that pot going out in that Gibson from, say, 70, because we got to get the comeback years of Gibson, I suppose. So early 70s Gibson, Les Paul versus, because you're talking 40,000, right? Well, I'd say it's a mid 50s. Mid 50s ones aren't that sought after. So let's say it's a mid 50s.
By the way, good evening, Stephen. I just want to make sure you know that we are paying attention.
Yeah, and I'm not, because I don't have YouTube up. Not because I don't want.
He was talking.
I'm looking over at that fly. I'm trying to keep him tracked.
Yeah, you're gonna keep him trapped with your eyes.
Yeah, he's right there. I got to be like the chameleon that wants to eat it. As soon as I put it in that cage, it's dead. But it must have pupated while I was sitting here, and then flown out of the cage. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh, my what I was getting at is this: that you got, like you said, the pot. That pot probably won't go out in my lifetime.
No. Theoretically, I mean, they have a
probably.
Yeah, I mean,
they have a life.
Yeah, I don't know what, but it says it's probably Borns, right? In that.
Yeah, and I think my custom, even let's face it. Here's the thing that kills me: people buying new guitars for investment pieces.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic for another episode.
We could talk that another day, because that's just dumb, my opinion. Except for certain runs of certain ones.
It's like gambling,
and even then,
not even good gambling.
Yep.
It's not even good gambling.
You are better off playing the stock market. Stock market.
Hey, all you people that are buying vintage guitars as an investment, I'm here to tell you, it's a shitty investment. Don't do it. It's a shitty investment. It really is. I don't know why.
Think about if you bought Apple stock. Think if you bought Apple stock or a Les Paul.
Yeah, if you bought a 59 Les Paul in 1980 and you paid $15,000 for it or whatever in 1989, like if you bought it in the 80s, and then you bought Apple stock in the same year,
the same amount of money,
$15,000, yeah, you'd have a yacht today, versus a really nice guitar.
If you'd have bought IBM in the 1950s or you bought a Les Paul in the 1950s, which one do you think would have grown faster?
Yeah, and IBM is not even that great now, but I mean,
no, but you could have sold that IBM a lot faster for a lot more money. I was looking at a job. They actually wanted an IBM ZOS
still a thing
system administrator. I was like, really?
Yeah.
I was like, holy.
eBay is still around and stuff too.
I know, it's crazy,
nuts.
Right?
But it's funny. You bring them up, like somebody asked me the other day, just as an aside, somebody asked me, they said, how is IBM like still in business? I said, patents. Yeah. And they were like, they had no idea how IBM was still able to make money. And I'm like, they have a lot of intellectual property that a lot of people pay a lot of money for.
Yeah, they do. And there's still very large companies that are using their, like you said, their database software, their operating system, as I mentioned, ZOS, which is the server software. I saw OS2 Warp still.
I was going to say OS2 is still around.
God, as well. Kidding me. OS2, yeah.
Yeah, so, all right. Let's talk about Charvel, because we've done the vintage thing to death tonight. I have got to manually swap this over. So I sent Jim, before the last episode, the Charvel documentary that's available on YouTube. He hadn't watched it. It's been his recommended for a while, but I think you've watched it now.
Yep,
I highly
I watched the
recommend it.
whole thing.
It's called the Sharvel Gang, and this is going to be just a little bit of a blurb about it, about Charvel, about some of the things that it doesn't show you, and really more of a conversation about, you know, so first off, I've owned Charvels. I've had a Charvel. I had right after they went and brought production back to the States. So if you don't know about Charvel's history, they started in the 1970s. It was just like parts being assembled by Wayne Charvel in the back of his shop, and I think it's just a regular music store, right? And it was just like buying parts, and that ended up becoming his primary business, right? He was buying
Mhm.
bodies from all over the places, buying necks from all over the places, and making bodies and necks for other people as well, and then putting them together. And it started out as a guitar repair shop and wound up being a guitar custom shop. It was actually probably the first real custom shop.
Yep.
And later on, Charvel's owner, Wayne Charvel, moved on. He sold the company to Grover Jackson. Grover
Yep.
Jackson, then, of course, when working with Randy Rhoads, decided they needed to form a new company to sell some of the more modern designs, called that Jackson Guitars. And so Jackson Guitars at some point continued, and Charvel just kind of like stagnated. Um, in the late 80s, there were some scandals. Charvel and Jackson were both kind of like screwed up. I don't think they really talk about that in the documentary, what really happened, because
Nope.
they sort of sold off the Charvel brand, and then they were supposed to be made. They were saying like made in Texas or whatever on the back on the nameplate, and they were actually being made in Japan, or and other
Yep.
foreign countries. There's some others that have been alleged, and I think the same thing also went on with Kramer at that time. So fast forward, the company changes hands a couple times. The one I had was right when they brought production back to the States. It was a good guitar. I paid like $500 for it. It was like not expensive, and it was a USA made guitar, like custom shop quality instrument, like really good neck, really good fretboard, really good pickups. It was Seymour Duncan pickups in it. The only thing I didn't like was a flat top Stratocaster, and it kind of like, because the edges were, you know, more like corners than rounded. It really kind of bothered my wrist. That's why I ended up selling it.
Yep.
Missed that guitar a little
I
bit
hate those.
miss a little bit from time to time. I miss that guitar. Um,
Yep.
not a lot. Like I don't think I'd buy it again if I ran into it. But so Charvel, I don't know where your history with that company lies, but I've had some other conversations with people about Charvel lately. Because their modern line, the Charvel Pro Mods and stuff. I remember when they first started coming out, and like I was excited because I was like, oh my god, we've actually got Super Strats using real Strat bodies instead of like an Ibanez RG thing, and that was probably mid 2000s, and the quality was good. People were saying like they're well made, like these are really good guitars, and it was kind of like at that time people weren't buying 80s style guitars, right? And so they kind of stagnated for a while. But now, with Sir taking off in the last 7 years, um, Charvel's making a killing because they're making Sir killers, essentially, except without the stainless steel frets, right?
Yeah.
And their pro mods, like, honestly, I played a couple of them, and they've all been really good guitars. Now I've heard from some people lately that like some of their quality is a little lacking right now, but I think that's just post-pandemic shit. I think I've heard that about a lot of companies that have actually
Yeah.
since cleaned up their act. So I don't put too much faith in that. It's like same thing with people like Fender's shit quality. Well, Fender also makes more guitars than anybody else. So you're more likely to see a bad one. And they
Yep.
probably sell more than anybody else, 2 to 1 now. So that's another whole like piece of that commentary. But anyway, Charvel, uh, I watched this documentary not knowing the whole story. I knew a little bit, and
Mhm.
I was immediately struck by the fact that Grover Jackson never appears, never does an interview,
Nope.
and I
Nope.
don't know what that's all about because
And they stay off Jackson a lot.
yeah, they don't really talk about Jackson and what was going on there because my understand was that Grover Jackson basically tanked the company.
Yeah.
And that he had a lot of personal problems, and maybe that's why he didn't want to discuss it. Because I have heard from others that there are allegations of him being involved both in drug use and drug trade.
Oh wow.
Which had, I now granted, this is things
Alleged.
I've heard.
Those are
I
alleged.
don't know any of this. I suspect it's probably just bad business practices, because Wayne, I think, even alludes to it in the documentary that like they weren't charging enough for the guitars they were selling.
Yep.
And for them, it was about the cool hangs with the artists and stuff.
Yep.
And a lot of the people in the company were about the cool hangs with the artists. And
yeah, I don't get the feeling that anybody was really making any money on that one.
Yeah.
I think it was more of a hang and let's get stoned and enjoy the day and maybe get some chips.
Also, also consider back then that like the cost of living was way lower.
It was a lot lower, even in Southern California.
Right. So for them, it's like, I just need a living wage. And a living wage back then was, $2 an hour. I mean, it was like ridiculously low. So these guys were just kind of like, I don't care if I'm getting to do what I want. I'm making guitars for Eddie Van Halen today.
That's right.
Kind of thing. Because they did do some models for Eddie, and they did models for other people as well. But like, they just didn't care that they weren't making money. And it's like, well, here, I'm going to make, I'll make this guitar for Eddie Van Halen. I'm going to charge him like $300. What? Like, how can you even assemble a guitar for $300?
You can't.
And
they weren't passing the lack of savings on to the customer. They were actually not charging enough for all their guitars. So,
and there was a lot of there was a lot of prototyping going on too.
Yeah.
And it's like, that wasn't built into the cost of things, and who knows that these like artists these artists deals were like back then. And
yeah, I don't get the feeling Wayne Charvel knew. I don't think that he either was listening to or cared what his CPAs or whatever were telling him. Like, you're not doing so well. Because
I get this succinct feeling that Wayne may have gotten out of the business himself because he couldn't handle his employees.
Yeah,
he was too nice a guy and couldn't tell people stop fucking around. Like,
right. You got to stop getting high all day, and you got to stop.
We got to we've got product that needs to go out the door. And he may have just been like one of those Southern California guys. It was just like, no big deal. Like,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, like when he left, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Like
when he left, I get the impression from the documentary that was practically penniless. I mean, it was like he was down.
He spent all his money trying to keep the company afloat.
Right. You would think that Wayne Charvel would have walked out like a lot of these guys with a parachute, and instead it was like Grover Jackson said, "Yeah, I'll take on the debt. I'll take on the thing. Don't worry about it." Get the fuck out.
It wasn't like they hadn't built a business already at that point. I mean, he was building guitars for Eddie Van Halen. Like, that had happened already, which is the thing that ignited them and made them a company that was successful. And it was like, how did you not parlay that into like making some real money?
Right.
And I mean, I don't have the answers to that mystery. But I do know that when Grover Jackson bought the company from Wayne Charvel, it was like peanuts, and it was in debt.
Less than $20,000.
Yeah, and it was in debt. Okay, he got a private loan, I think, from his parents to buy Charvel. Yeah, and then
if I remember hearing it correctly,
And then he said they said in the thing that like he worked really, really hard to make the company profitable, and like worked really, really hard to get that debt down because he had to pay the debt off. And
that's right.
I can't imagine, because he was young. He was like 18 or 19 when he bought the company. I can't imagine going through the shenanigans and then like just being like not having a plan for what you're going to do with the company after you get out of debt. And in his case,
thought he was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying I thought that he was in his early 20s because. I know he worked. Grover Jackson worked for Fender before he purchased.
Yeah, but it was like not a long period of time.
Right.
It was,
He makes it. Yeah. When you hear interviews, it makes it sound like he worked there a long time. He didn't. But
no, he was there
I'm
like
just saying,
6 months or something.
Yeah.
He left because he had a disagreement with how they ran the company,
Yeah.
and like essentially how they built the guitars. And it's like, okay, well then he goes over to Charvel, who is also doing business with Fender, which is kind of hilarious. They were doing, actually that's how Sharval got started. They were doing finishing work for Fender. So like,
that's right.
If Fender needed refinishes or custom finishes, they were sending them over to Sharval, and he was doing them.
I think they were building. What were they building? Bodies or necks for them? Something like that.
I think they might have done some necks for him too, but
doing finishing. I know that
they were building hot rodded necks for Fenders under the table, which is what made them sort of known amongst that scene out there in California. That's where you go to get your neck. Okay,
right. And I think that's where Eddie Van Halen went to get that neck, and that was the whole fame of the neck.
Yeah. So anyway,
did you notice though during that documentary, every single Fender had a piece of tape over the word Fender?
Oh, yeah.
Everything that was Fender had a piece of tape over it. That was hilarious. Yeah, I just thought that was funny. Well, they didn't even want him in the documentary. It's like, that's obviously a Telecaster. That's obvious.
No. So I think it's a tongue-in-cheek joke. Because,
do you think so?
Yeah, because the company who owns Jim, who owns Charvel?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's Fender. That's why I thought it was weird that they would blank it out. No. But they talked about their comeback at the end.
Mm-hmm. So actually, other things that I noticed in this documentary I thought were real cool. They talked to was it the guy in Def Leppard that talked about using the Super Champ?
Yes. Yep.
The Super Champ. Yep. The Super Champ that they like. He's like, I had no idea. He's like, I just want my guitar to sound like my practice amp. And they're like, well, what's your practice amp? And it was a Super Champ. And he's like, yeah, we can do that. And then they took the speaker out and put it into an orange cab, and like made it sound real good, and then like put that on track. And I was like, well, it kind of makes sense because that amp is a sleeper. Like it's a really good amp. I have.
That was funny.
I would be lying if I said I let one get away just recently that I was like, I should have bought that damn thing. I just thought that was a funny story. Like you can imagine somebody who's known for being pretty much like a studio pro at this point. Like he's recorded records with Rockman and stuff since then. But like, we could go in the studio like, well, I have to plug into a Marshall, right? Like, yeah, but I don't like that sound. I just want my practice amp,
Yep. I had to laugh. He has a like the what is it? The gear thing where they look at all their gear, the rig rundown, and they're talking about a Jackson that he was playing that he actually showed in that video.
Yeah,
by the way.
He's prototype
in the documentary, and there's a prototype, and he was talking about how fat the neck was, and the neck was so fat. He goes, everybody that's grabbed it has said, that's the biggest neck I've ever grabbed. He goes, I was joking with them, and I said, can you make a bigger one? Can you make a bigger one? And finally, Grover Jackson gave him a neck that's like this big around. and he goes, that's it. That's the one. I think he just wants to do this to it. He doesn't even care that he can put his hand around it. He just wants to play it. But I thought it was hilarious. And even, because he's a little guy. And short and thin. Who's the guy that does the rig rundowns? The tall guy. He grabs it, and he's like, "That is a fat neck. I can't even give." And that's one tall guy with some big ass hands, and he couldn't get his hands around. But anyway, that was. I enjoyed a lot of the tongue in cheek. I enjoyed the documentary as a whole. I thought it was good. Although I think the guy walking through the desert was a little superfluous.
There's he's the guy that made the thing. There was a lot of melodrama in this documentary that was just not melodramatic in the real world. Like
no. But there were some funny stories about getting high at the plant and doing this. Most of them were around
fires.
Yeah, getting high and getting drunk and starting fires and hanging out with people and famous people. It's a fun documentary, but nobody got rich. I mean, that's the funny thing. Except for maybe Grover Jackson later. Nobody got rich.
Maybe Fender now.
Yeah, and Fender.
Well, I'll tell you this: Grover Jackson figured out what he needs to charge for a guitar.
Yeah.
Because have you seen Friedman's prices? Holy shit.
Jesus. Yeah.
I honestly, like, Friedman makes great guitars. I'm not gonna lie, like, their guitars are really good. Are they $4,000 good? No.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're paying for a little light relic there. So I don't know. I actually if you were looking at Charvel stuff today, honestly, you can't really go wrong. The Pro Mods are great.
Yep.
Pretty much everything. I just like I guess it's coming out of Mexico. But I think some of it's actually coming out of court, and they're
I
fantastic.
believe that.
They're fantastic. I was like, I honestly, when I built this thing, I was like, that was the other option, was to go and get
Sharval.
a Charvel, because I was like, I could have, if when the frets wear out, I can have it replaced with stainless steel, and that's it. Guitar done. And of course, we know that pro players are using them. Look at Guthrie Govan, of course. Guthrie Govan is, his Charvel is amazing. And I think they're coming out with an inexpensive version, or a less expensive version, maybe not an inexpensive one, but so that's a whole other conversation. I would probably I have a softer spot for Charvel than Kramer, and I like Kramer guitars too. I don't think I would ever own a vintage one of either. Kramer's getting up there in price now, vintage wise too. I can remember when they were $800 or $900. Now to buy a vintage Kramer, you're looking at like $2,000, which is pretty wild, because it's like nobody wanted these damn things in the 90s. You couldn't give them away. And then of course now and it was part of that's because of the scandal, right? But now they're worth $2,000-$3,000, And then the Kramer relaunch, I haven't actually had a chance to play one yet, so can't say really much about it. We ready to move on to the gig report? I think we've sort of done all this stuff to death tonight.
I think we're good.
So, do you have gigs you want to talk about?
I had a gig.
Yeah,
I don't know if I want to talk about.
Well, do you?
I had a
Hey, bad talk is okay talk too.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will listen this long that's gonna hear or be local. We had a gig. I had a first time. There's a first time for everything. Somebody walked off the stage and I was left holding the bag, and I had to pick up.
That's not fun.
Nope, that was not fun. It was difficult. And there's no, I'm not being negative. I don't want anybody to think, oh yeah, this is, what a jerk, anything like that.
I have been the guy that's walked off. So, and that was a long, long time ago. I was a very angry young man when that happened. I'm not a young man at all anymore.
It was really tough for me to, I don't, but the gig went okay. I brought only my Fenders. See, I was going to be the Fender guy that night, and so I thought I'll just bring my Strat, my Telly. And no, I should have brought my Les Paul, because and I had a long discussion with somebody online about this. I said, call it a crutch, whatever the fuck you want. But for me, this is me, and I know there's other people that are different. But for me and my rig that I had with me at the time, which was my Kemper set up a certain way, and my wah pedal, that's it, and in-ear monitors, I needed to hear myself, and neither the Strat nor the Telly were going to do what I needed to do as a solo guitar in the mix. I am not Stevie Ray Vaughan with a Dumble cranked behind him. I'm not, all these other famous guys that do it well.
Actually, like, I can comment.
And you're a Strat guy, so yeah.
Yeah, I can comment on it a little bit. So like, that's something that I think a lot of people miss. I actually like the fact that when I play a Strat, and this is the thing that I think is different between Strats and Les Pauls, where my pick hits determines what my guitar sounds like. And I think Les Pauls are like a lot more forgiving. for where your pick hits the strings versus the change in tonality as it goes over the pickups. And I think some of that has to do with the single coil thing. I think some of that has to do with construction. I think most of it's the single coil thing, but like I play aggressively to fill out a sound if it's just me. Otherwise I lay back and I'm not. I can kind of relax and be like, all right, yeah, okay, guys, do what you want. And then of course I got this guitar with the humbucker, so I don't. This one is not that bad at all.
Yep.
But yeah, full single coils. I have a very specific place where it's like, this is the optimal place to pick. This is where I pick when I want to be brighter. This is where I want to pick when I want to be darker. And this is where I want to pick when I go fast because I need to be able to move the pick in a certain way. So like I've got all these things worked out. It's not, and you just do it by instinct, but I can guarantee you the first time I picked up a Strat, I didn't know how to do any of that shit. It took me a long time of just internalizing like, oh, if I play this way, this is what it sounds like. And then it's automatic now. I don't even think about it. It's autopilot.
Right. And for me, that's exactly how I feel when I pick up my Les Paul. And that's what I was explaining to him. I said, I don't think about where my switch is. I don't have to think about where my volume controls are, my tone controls are. I don't think about anything. I can go from a clean, acoustic, almost bell tone, to in your face, super high end, mid range crunch to a low, gnarly, whatever. And I can get there, and I know how to do it. That does not mean that I couldn't do it with a Strat with the right amount of time and a little bit of settings and adjustments. It just means what I know and where I am. And that's really what it came down to. So I will not be doing that again. I may actually sell those guitars. No, I'm just kidding because
so like if I'm going back and forth between guitars on the Kemper, I had a whole set of presets that were specifically for single coil style guitars, and I don't think a Telecaster is nearly as bad as like going from a Les Paul to a Strat, because you lose output. The frequency response is totally different, and even where you pick is like completely different, because you on a Les Paul you pick between the pickups, right?
Yep.
And on a Strat where you would pick on a Les Paul, there's a fucking pickup there. So it's like, what do I do now? You kind of have to work around that. And on a Tele, I think that's part of the reason why they're very similar is because, number one, Tele pickups are different. We all know that. But like the Tele pickup is, and its arrangement is much closer to what you would have in a Les Paul than, having 3 single coils that are wound in the way that they are in a Strat. So.
Agreed.
Okay. You want me to start with my rig rundown or my rig rundown gig report?
Yeah, that was all I had.
So, I did buy something new in the last 2 weeks. I forgot. I bought another cart. I just bought a hand truck. I went and bought a $50 Milwaukee hand truck from Home Depot because I'm waiting on that cab to show up, right? And I'm like, I want to start using amps again. I mean, I got enough tubes. There are boxes of tubes up here. And I'm like, I can get away with, running an amp for a while and like not worrying about it. So I took out my Mark 525 the other night, to the open jam. And I took my cabinet and I put it on the cart and just bungee corded it on, and I actually walked it across the fucking street, which is semi busy. And it was like really good experience. I left early. I was able to get my cab and stuff off stage, throw it on the thing, and just wheel it right out of there, no problems. And it was a great experience to do that. And actually, I got to be honest, like I played reasonably well. I mean, I was like, but I was also loud as shit. And I had, because I had my Mark 525 with me, like I was able to be heard, and I was able to hear myself. And I was probably too loud. I don't know. Nobody seemed to complain. So, but it was kind of the perfect mix for a change. And I was like really, really happy about it. And so, there's that. So that happened. And then of course, like outside of gigs, Mastering got completed this weekend. So we're moving right along on the project. Tomorrow night, I will be working on album art and recording tracks for this other thing that I'm working on for the studio. And then, so there's like things coming, right? It's like real soon, I'm going to have another EP on iTunes and Spotify, maybe within a week, because we're talking about doing the CD Baby listing tomorrow. So I went down a whole rabbit hole on that too, by the way. So if you don't know about CD Baby and the different services that are available to get your music on streaming services and to get your music copyrighted and all that good stuff, CD Baby is like one of the popular ones. There's DistroKid. There's a couple of others, and I was laughing because part of the mastering conversation was CD Baby still wants us to submit 16-bit 44.1 recordings, so that they can send them and submit them to iTunes and whatever. And I'm like, really? 16-bit? Like in a day when 2496 is like the old standard. That's the old standard. I knew that like 2448 would be like, I figured that would be what they would be requesting, right? But come to find out, he said, well, if you're using DistroKid, they do 2448. And I'm like, why wouldn't we use DistroKid for this project to get the stuff up there?
Right.
Well, we had a long conversation. Me and my co-writer had a long conversation. He's much more comfortable with not having a month or an annual fee, which you don't need that with DistroKid. If you have DistroKid, your account is free. It's the stuff that you have posted that costs you money. And so you can actually choose to pay to have your stuff up there in perpetuity for $50.
Right.
Which is the same price as CD Baby, right? It's like $60 on both. All told, because you have to pay like the $10 submission fee or whatever. It's a whole thing. Like you can go and you can look at the numbers, dollars, cents of it. I think we're gonna go to CD Baby. I said that maybe at some point we'll remaster it or re-record the stuff. I don't really care. At some point in the future, maybe we'll do it as a full album instead of an EP, and then we can revisit this stuff and do it in a much better way. But I am happy with the project, the way it came out, and like just working through this whole thing it's the first time I think we've had like a moment where we sort of butted heads, because I was like, wait a minute, just because you're comfortable using a service doesn't make it the right one. And that's why I was like, But then I got and of course he said some things to me that I was like, really? He goes, well, all these services compress our music anyway. They make it smaller file format sizes. It's like, well, yeah, but you could have a Xerox of a Xerox, or you could have a Xerox of an original. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you feel about that. But that said, I got a copy of the 16-bit masters, and they sound okay. I can hear a difference between the 16-bit and the 24-bit masters, but still preferred medium would be higher quality. We do have the 24-bit masters, so if they ever do open it up, I can submit those instead, and we can get the music replaced or whatever. Or maybe we can. I want to look and see if we can do lossless, because that would be even better if we could submit and pay an extra fee and do lossless. I can't imagine it would be much more money. And the other commentary, of course, is that all of these services, right? Like, you don't really know how they're going to enforce the media standards. So like if I'm over on Twitch, right, and I'm live streaming and I want to play my album on my live stream, it belongs to me, right? I have the copyright for both the publishing and the recordings.
Right.
It would be me and my co-writer, right? Because that's what we're filling up in the next 2 days. He actually has already applied for a copyright with our info on it and everything. So, but if I played on Twitch, is Twitch going to know that? Is Twitch going to mute my VOD? Like, is that something? Are they going to mute me while I'm live? And I can't even get CD Baby to answer my question.
Yeah.
And I guarantee I couldn't get DistroKid to answer my question either. Because they don't know. You know why they don't know? Because they use third parties to enforce all that. Which means that they just tell them to enforce it. They don't necessarily have like a way you...
They don't know that you're the original... Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to... we might brave it. We might do it anyway and just see what happens. That'd be so funny if I get a copyright strike for my own music. That'd be so funny. And then of course I'll get it lifted because guess what, jackasses? I own the copyright. So you know, because I want to promote it through the live stream. So when it comes out, I will probably put something up in the Discord, the show Discord, so that like everybody can come and watch live on Twitch when I play the album.
Right.
And do something stupid while I'm doing it. So anyway, I don't really have anything else to share. I thought that was just an interesting thing. It's part of the gig, part of the gig in the sense that like it's part of the work, you know. We're gonna order physical copies. We're ordering. We were talking about ordering 20. I think we're gonna order 100 because I had somebody tell me I'll take 30, and I was like, what the hell do you want 30 for? I want to give them to my friends. God. I want to give them to my family. I want to give them to my friends. I'm like, if you're going to pay for them, like, you know, it's like, I'll order them. You're going to finance it. You know, it's like, so I was like, all right, well, maybe I can make this work. So, but, and of course I'm doing the album artwork. I'm doing the back panel and all that stuff. And I've been working on that, so that's another project. This is how independent bands work. Is like you just divide up the work and somebody does it, and it's like at the end of the day, it's like this is a full fucking time job. Yeah, it is. And guess what? You don't get paid shit. So it's a labor of love, and if you don't like it, then now you know why bands break up.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So anyway. We've had a good episode tonight, Jim. I'm ready to depart if you are.
Yeah.
I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we've been Practical Guitarists.
We absolutely have.